What's up, everybody? We are ready to get started.
I can bring my mic over.
There we go. Should sound a little bit better. And let's see. Grim, you gotta you weren't there to get you better say something to get the Lance loot because it only starts once the stream is live. So Labzor, you get 1,000 Lance loot, and we'll see who else and you didn't get any. Pinecone gets 500 and Friction gets 250. And Grim, I like the enthusiasm. So I'm going to give you 200 Lance loot, but you got to be on the ball next time. So you get extra bonus Lance loot because of the enthusiasm. So on this channel, effort counts. Yeah. I don't know what it counts for because so far there isn't anything you could purchase with Lance loot. It doesn't seem to be a currency anybody is accepting. Yeah. So Grim says, I didn't know the rules. My fault. Yeah. So I usually count it. I have to be paying attention. Once that I'm on the screen, that's when I start counting. It's not whoever shows up whenever the stream is like visible. That's normally how I do it. Sometimes I'm not paying attention because I'm goofy and I start a stream and I get distracted because I have like 43 windows open on the other screen over here. And I'll just start looking at something. And then like, I don't know what is wrong with my brain because, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to start a stream. Let's go live. Let's do the countdown. And I'm ready to go. And then I get distracted. I'm the one choosing to do this. How do I get distracted by? I choose to do one thing and then I distract myself from the thing I currently chose to do. What is wrong with me? So that's just how it is. Anyway, Detroiter, how's it going? What are you up to? We were supposed to review stuff on your channel, and you gave me these you're like, hey, why don't we review these clips? You gave me like 45-minute clips, and I'm like, I don't what? It was wild. I mean, I'd be happy to review them, but it would take eternity. All right, Sapir, you are here. Good to see you. It's always good to have somebody that can moderate, just in case people start saying insane things in the chat. We got Goblin Lord. I love the name. Eric is here. Eric Wales. Jonah, what's up? How's it going? We got Andrew Moy. What's up? And so Andrew Moy says, hey, not sure it's intentional, but there's two streams going. Yeah, so one of the streams is like widescreen for a regular computer, and then the other stream like goes to like whatever live stream thing is like for phones. It's a feature that StreamYard has where it will send it to both places, and it's like recommended. So I'm following the recommendation, and maybe there's people that are going to watch this on the phone, and it looks a little better on the phone with that other stream thing. I see all the chats from both of them, but you're only going to probably see them from one. All right. So I know it's been over 2 weeks since I did a stream. I did release a couple recorded videos. I had family visiting and stuff. It made doing a stream effectively impossible. So let's get into it. This time we're doing a humor video. I do have some guests coming onto the channel. I've been lining those up. I have seen people like, all he's doing is just reviewing videos, and it's true. But I got to actually get guests, and I'm picky about what guests I bring on the channel, and I haven't been super proactive with getting more people on here. I know I made a request of everybody to make some guest suggestions. And and you will see a video that I will be in sometime in the next couple days, which should be pretty big. And I also am going to be starting a series on moral relativism, like what it is and common myths about it. So stay tuned for that. And it's going to be a recorded series rather than a live stream. All right. So Detroiter asks, have you seen the Craig Biddle realism versus anti-realism video? No, I saw that it was up there, but I haven't seen it. This is something I really want to figure out. There is a bunch of like AI produced stuff that when I do a search for more realism or more relativism, whatever, I'll get 30 videos published in the past 2 weeks that are just like 3-minute videos that I have no interest in because it's all AI stuff. And I don't know, there's like no way to block channels on YouTube. Like I don't want to see that. I want to see stuff like human produced content. If anyone knows a way around that, like if there's a way to hide stuff, like most other places is Substack, Twitter, whatever, you could block things or hide things, but YouTube is like, no, we're going to show you whatever we feel like showing you. And I don't like that. But no, I haven't seen it. Do you think it's worth having a look at? Because I don't know if you know, but I already had a discussion with Greg on my channel, which I think went pretty well. I think we got along quite well. Whose channel is the big video going to be on? I don't know if it's like a secret thing, so I don't want to say. It probably isn't, but since I didn't make an announcement, then or like I'm not going to say. You'll have to wait and see, and then I'll announce it once it's there. But I was told it should be up the next day or two, and so that was a wide ranging discussion on whatever. You'll see it when it's out. And one thing is some of my interest is shifting more towards intuition and metaphilosophy than just meta ethics, and so you're going to be seeing more and more of me reading about that, writing about that on my blog, and then talking about that. I have a couple very long blog posts coming up, and I do have one coming out next week on my blog, which is my quietist realist account. Quietist reasons account. It's a quietist account of reasons. I said quietist realist, but someone's got a Freudian slip. He's accidentally admitted he's secretly a realist. You got me. So I'll have that. It's actually fairly short. I opted for something that's a little more accessible, where I talk about my issue with reasons talk in contemporary philosophy, and it doesn't do anything else. I don't review 17 tweets and talk about what's wrong with all of them or something ridiculous like that. So stay tuned for that blog post. I know there's not that much transfer of my blog and here, but maybe I'll do the thing I used to do back in the day, like a couple of years ago, and like read the blog post on here. I don't know. I think I should. I want people to get the material, and it's hard to just some stuff is hard to wing it. It's hard to just say what I want to say when I put thought into putting it down on paper. Edgar says, "Are you a scientific realist?" No, I'm not. I'm a pragmatist. I have a allergy to metaphysics, and I don't like to call myself a realist about most things. Like if you ask me, like, do you think that the things posited by science are real? I would say yes, but it's like yes with an asterisk. So I'm not a scientific realist in any robust sense. I think the stuff posited by science is real, but I don't like to call myself a scientific realist. Heather says, "Merry Christmas to you and your family." Thank you. This year we got a Christmas tree in a pot, and the plan is to hopefully keep it alive and plant it. And we're going to start doing that. I really don't like this idea of cutting the trees down. All right. Sapir says the mainstream realist rhetoric is more or less just a collection of mischaracterizations of anti-realism. Yeah, that's pretty much true. And that's what you'll see on my myths page. In fact, let me post that here so you could see it. In fact, I'll post two things. One is just a discussion about what relativism is. And it's interesting, because I'm not a relativist, but I have views that are close to relativism. And I do think it's really unfortunate that relativism has fallen so out of favor among academic philosophers, because I think it's far more defensible than it's treated as being. So that link there is for the relativism article, where I just say, here's what I characterize relativism as. And this one is myths and misunderstandings about relativism. And what is the number? I know I added at least one to it. Let's see. There's 24 myths about relativism so far. So I tend to go for overkill. Oh, and I have 24 live viewers at this very moment. Serendipity. It's a sign from the realist gods. All right. Jonah says, "I know you're skeptical about stance independent reasons, but do you feel the same way about hypothetical imperatives?" Yes, I do. So the account that I have roughly is that there are only like descriptive facts. Like there are facts, and I think something that gave me pause and made me start thinking about this a bit more recently is Matt Lutz talking about how people sometimes construe naturalism as just treating moral facts as descriptive facts or the normative facts. And he says something like the normative, I think he said something like the normative, I have to go back and review it, but he drew a distinction between verbal differences and metaphysical differences that I thought was really interesting. And it's prompted me to rethink at the very least how I frame things, and if not, how I go about considering naturalist accounts of realism. But roughly the issue is this. So there are going to be these sorts of conditional facts about what facts would satisfy what desires. So, if there's a glass of water on the table and you're thirsty and you're like a human with normal physiology, the glass of water should satisfy the thirst. So you could say something like, if you wanted to satisfy your thirst, in fact, you could say drinking the glass of water would satisfy your thirst. But you could say something like, look, if you want to satisfy your thirst, drinking that glass of water will get the job done. And that would be true. And it would be true independent of anybody's goals, standards, or values. There are going to be these objective or stance independent facts about the relation between desires and desire satisfaction. Like if you don't want to be on fire, avoiding jumping into a burning building will accomplish that desire, at least for the time being. And that fact is true independent of whether or not you have the desire. The fact that going into the building would be inconsistent with a desire to not be on fire is true independent of whether you in fact have the desire. So there are these sort of descriptive relational facts about means and ends, or desires and means of satisfying desires. Now, sometimes what people do with hypothetical imperatives is they will reify reasons in the same way that I have a problem with the way that people reify objective moral talk. So someone might say, like Parfit might say, the fact that touching a hot stove would burn your hand gives you a reason, an external reason, a reason independent of your desires to not touch the hot stove. Whereas if someone's going to construe morality in terms of hypothetical imperatives, they might say, if you desire not to burn your hand, then that gives you a reason to not touch the hot stove. And I don't like if you treat that as something reducible, like if that just bottoms out in or is reducible to, it would be inconsistent with the desire to avoid burning your hand to touch a hot stove, or it would satisfy the desire you could. What's another way you could construe it? Why am I stumbling over my words? Let me have a drink. Get my brain in order. So the hypothetical imperative idea would be something like, if you have the desire, this gives you a reason. And what I'm saying is, if talk of giving reasons is just like a kind of roundabout way of saying it would be consistent with your goals to act in one way or act in another way, that's fine. But if the idea is that you're literally given a goal, or that your desires provide or furnish you with goals in some more metaphysically robust or conceptually robust way, I'm going to take some issue with that. So I do typically have a problem with hypothetical imperatives, because I think they are construed in this weird reasons giving way. I really just have a big problem with this reasons talk in contemporary analytic philosophy. All right. Dharma Tycoon says, I heard in a podcast that you did after you started reading Civic Consent after being told you seem to share a lot of his ideas. How's that been? Pretty good. I haven't revisited that much, actually. There's been a lot going on between having a baby and having a horrific medical issue and other sorts of stuff. So I haven't been reading a lot of I haven't been reading much Wittgenstein since then. Okay, I haven't read any. My interest, well, it's still an interest, but it's on the back burner. Right now, I've been reading a lot more stuff on intuitions and their role in philosophical methods. Now, I did read a lot about this back about 15 years ago, and I'm just revisiting it and getting up to date on it. And there's a handful of new papers, but it's really revisiting a lot of the same stuff. All right. Eric says, yay for metaphilosophy. Yeah, it's good stuff. Oh, this is regarding trying to get them to not show me stuff. If you see a video, click the dots and click do not recommend. That's as close as it gets. I'll try that. Sapir says to Friction, there's too many errors made about meta ethics. You need an entire channel dedicated to that, which is basically what Lance's channel is. Pretty much. Wow, so many comments. Echo for Vial through to is it? Oh man, showing my dumbness. Is that pounds? I don't even know what the currency is. Oh my god, I look stupid on now. I look stupid on here, but whatever. It's authentic stupidity. Hey Lance, your thoughts on determinism, if you don't mind. Okay, and well, at least I figured out what DM was. Okay. All right. So I used to just say I'm a determinist, but these days, I don't know. Maybe determinism is true. Maybe it's not. I'm not sure how we would know if determinism is true. It could be that indeterminism is true and that some events are random or something like that. I certainly don't believe in any like spooky metaphysics or something like that. So I don't think that there are certain like causal powers humans have that are inconsistent with determinism. So I don't think anything like that. Anyway, so about determinism. I am agnostic on whether determinism is true or not. If someone, back to the wall, someone said, is determinism true? I think I'd say, yeah, I think so, probably. But I'm not 100% sure about that. And I don't know how I would become more or less confident about the matter. As far as its relationship to free will, I just don't believe in free will anyway. I think free will is this defective concept. You could probably craft some meaningful notion about the like reasons responsiveness and the role that holding people accountable plays within certain social systems, where we hold certain people accountable when they meet certain sorts of agentic conditions, and we don't hold other people accountable when they don't meet those conditions. Um, but that's a sort of socially constructed thing. I mean, we would have free will in the same sense that we have money. Like I don't see it as like true in some deep metaphysical sense. So that would be roughly some kind of compatibilist view. I see some of those as unthreatening. I just scratch my head and wonder why they want to call that free will. Like just say people are accountable or something. So since I don't really believe in desert-based moral responsibility or free will as a substantive and meaningful concept worth rescuing, the whole project of trying to reconcile determinism with free will just seems like a waste of time to me. So I'm just not really into the compatibilist project. I am fine with holding people morally accountable for their actions within a sort of constructed framework. And I think it would be best probably to abandon the legacy of trying to resuscitate the term free will to refer to the agentic conditions that we consider necessary to hold people accountable in certain sorts of ways. Like, we're not going to throw a baby in prison or a dog in prison um, for the same thing that we would throw an adult in prison for. And I think that is prudent and wise. We should do that. Now, does that mean that there's some deep metaphysical difference between adults and children? No, I think it's like a practical question. So I don't think there's anything. That doesn't mean I don't think there are important questions there. I just don't think that we're like going to discover the correct account of free will. It's more a matter of engineering things for our purposes. And Dharma Tycoon says, "Oh, and are you still working on your AMA video?" I am not. So that's something where I need to sit down, go through all the questions, sort them out, really think about which ones I want to address and how I want to address them. It's the kind of project that I'm going to need a bit of spare time to do, and it might be something that I can make time for over the holidays. But no promises at this point because, I all of that happened during a period of flux, and now I've got a baby, and so I don't know how much spare time I'm going to have, and that turned out to be a bit more effort than I remember Kane B saying, "I hate doing these. It's a lot of work." So I don't want to make promises that I'm going to do that over the break because I don't know what I'm going to do over the break. Over the break, maybe I'm just going to spend a lot of time with my baby because that might be funner and more important to me. So that's what I might do. Egrass, what do you think about Van Frosten's position, constructive empiricism? I don't know anything about that position. He also has a negative attitude towards metaphysics, but he wouldn't say scientific entities are real. Yeah, I'm fine with saying they're not real. I mean, just tell me what you mean by real and scientific entities, and I'll tell you whether I'm comfortable saying they're real or not. Faith, because of reason, says, "Am I too late for the giving of Lancelot?" You are too late, but I hope you stick around anyway. Existing says, "I'm from Romania." Well, welcome. Welcome, person from Romania. Cool. Jonah, I don't know if you're asking me this. Do you think justified belief is possible? It's going to be one of those, it depends what you mean by justified belief. So, people are often chasing this like notion of justification as though it's this like intrinsic property that things can have or not have independent of some standard of justification that we ourselves elect to employ. And I don't view justification in that way. I view justification more as again the kind of thing that is subordinate to our goals, desires, how we want to construct things. A lot of justification, standard notion of justification occurs in like a social context. Why shouldn't we punish you? Well, I was justified in my action. It was an act of self-defense. And so that's really how I see justification. But a lot of people see justification in a way that seems mysteriously floating free of our accountability to others and the social relations we have to them, or in terms of some sort of deliberative practice. So, if I want to have justified beliefs rather than unjustified beliefs, why? Well, if you want to have beliefs that help you successfully navigate the world and achieve your goals, you can use a term for those beliefs that are going to do that. Then because you could turn out to be wrong. Maybe they're not true, but there could be practices that they pass a threshold where it's reasonable to act on the view. And you can say that they're justified. I don't have a problem with that, but that would be a sort of pragmatic conception of justification. So, do you think justified belief is possible? If you mean justified belief in a pragmatic sense, absolutely, sure. If you mean it in some other sense, then probably not. I'm a pragmatist. Why would I favor some non-pragmatic conception of justification? Oh, right. I didn't know this would become like an impromptu Q&A. Wow, what's the main problem with compatibilism? I find it extremely convincing. I don't really have a big problem with it. It's a framing issue. So, compatibilism is the view that free will is compatible with determinism. But what are we talking about when we're talking about free will? Do we need that concept? Is there a fact of the matter about whether people have free will or don't have free will? We would need to have a really good account of what we're talking about when we talk about free will. And then we could ask the question of, is that compatible with determinism? Like, it, if what we mean by free will is a set of social practices whereby we hold people accountable when they have certain agential capacities, and we don't hold them accountable, or we hold them less accountable depending on whether they don't have those capacities or they're diminished in some way, that's just something we could choose to do. So, like, of course, that's consistent with determinism. So then it becomes a trivial fact that something that we can call free will that does the social job and practical job we want it to do is consistent with determinism. It's trivial. It's trivial in the sense that, like, I just grant that we can do that. It's not trivial in the sense that it's like not useful. I'm not saying it's trivial, so let's just not hold people accountable. So depending on how you construe compatibilism, I'm just going to go, yeah, okay, I'm cool with that. But what I would wonder is why are we calling this free will? Is this the same sort of dispute that other people take themselves to be having? I'm just wondering at the framing of the issue. It seems like people are trying to figure out if is compatibilist true or is some libertarian conception of free will true. What if they're not even talking about the same subject matter? Then what the hell kind of dispute is that? Oh, right. Someone asks if I saw a discussion about the unintelligibility thesis. No, I haven't seen that. Vasil says, would you demand that anything hangs on the question of whether some realism is true? It makes a testable difference to how the world behaves. It's going to be so context dependent on what you mean by realism. Like, realism about what, in what context? Generally speaking, probably not. So I don't know if I don't think scientific realism is going to make much of a difference to the predictions I make, the actions I take, the way I go about making decisions. I think most metaphysics makes little to no difference. I think it's typically practically superfluous, which is, if you're pragmatist, it's practical superfluity is one of the reasons why, at least some of us are not so interested in metaphysics. When you said it's fine to have them, you know what? I don't think, I don't think it's that fine. I think that if people are wasting their time on philosophical projects that are not achieving something of value, then, it's the equivalent of like playing Sudoku or something. Like, if people want to do philosophy for recreation, that, like, people can do all sorts of things for recreation. But when that starts to, occupy the niche in which, I and others could be doing more productive work, or they themselves could be doing productive work. Some of these people are smarter and more capable than I am, and then they're just preoccupied with self-referential and pointless puzzles, and are caught up in bizarre theories predicated on misunderstandings about language and just judgments and inferences made on the lack of knowledge about human psychology. That's really frustrating. I don't like to see people waste their time, and I don't think people on reflection want to waste their time. So if I'm right that a lot of these philosophical pursuits are a profound waste of time, and that the people in pursuit of them would regard them as a profound waste of time if they had what they themselves would agree is a more accurate perspective of what's going on, uh, yeah, I'm going to have a problem with people doing that. For the same reason, I'm not okay with people wasting their time on astrology or alchemy or other sort of defunct practices that don't really achieve anything of value. Maya asks, what do you think about constructivism? Do you mean like constructivism in a meta-ethical context? I think it's so one thing about constructivism is it's difficult to classify. Like I don't even know where to put Kant. You do have things that are pretty firmly anti-realist, like Humean constructivism. I don't have a huge problem with constructivism. It seems like another one of these things where it does look to me like some of the motivations for certain meta-ethical positions is to try to accommodate, appease, or reconcile certain features of what are taken to be ordinary moral thought and practice. So people look at ordinary practice and think, all right, well, I don't think non-cognitivism or even expressivism is going to cut it unless it's some super refined contemporary expressivism. I don't think error theory does the job. I don't think crude early forms of relativism do the job. And so we're going to need something refined that does justice to these realist seeming features of our practices. And so that's where you get your quasi-realism and your contemporary expressivist accounts, and maybe some of your constructivist accounts. Although I suspect the motivations for constructivism are often quite different from that accommodationist approach that I think is more characteristic of quasi-realism and expressivism more broadly, which is explicitly like this conciliatory, like, yeah, we recognize there's all these realist seeming stances. We want to do justice to those appearances and not downplay what we take to be their force while still maintaining a distance from a full-blown moral realism. That's what I see as the intention of contemporary expressivist accounts. And I'm not motivated by that because I don't think there are a bunch of realist seeming features of the discourse in the first place. So I think that they're giving ground where they don't need to. As far as whether constructivism does that, I think it was intentionally designed to be similarly conciliatory. I think it does that. It de facto has that sort of feature, and I just want to step out of the game altogether of trying to pay any sort of I don't know, like to bend the knee in any way to some sort of presumption in favor of folk realism, and then try to accommodate that, like say, okay, well, it looks like realists have an edge here, but actually they don't. I don't even think it looks like they have an edge. So I see any conciliationist approach towards towards meta ethics more broadly as misguided. I got to get into the humor video, everybody. It's been like 30 minutes. What are y'all doing? I don't object to people talking to me. I'm not serious. This is, if I didn't want to answer your questions, I'd say, shut up. We're getting into the video. All right. Or roughly speaking, Van Fresen's position is that we're committed to believing only in the observable. Everything that theory says about the unobservable, we have an agnostic attitude. Yeah. How literally are we talking about observable? Does this mean with the senses or what? Because like, we don't observe atoms. So are we ruling out atoms? Like anything we see with an instrument? Like if I look at something in a telescope, is that an observable or not? All right. I agree there's limited time, so it shouldn't be wasted. I don't know what that's in reference to. Ideal observer theory. Yeah, I'm going to view that similarly to how I would view constructivism. So I do think that there are some interesting ways in which more sophisticated forms of subjectivism and ideal observer theory may converge. I'm certainly not going to buy into any notion that everybody's values would converge in extremis. Like if people were fully informed and ideally rational, we would all converge in having the same values so that there's a single correct set of facts about what everybody would want to do. Something about that seems like weirdly semi-Kantian in certain sorts of ways, like all rational agents would act the same way. I don't think so. I think people have fundamentally divergent values that are irreconcilable and incorrigible, and people just want different things. So something like Humean constructivism would be a more acceptable position on my view. Yeah. So, and I, in fact, I didn't even read the rest of your comment, but you say it seems similar to your view of appraisal relativism, but it indexes. Well, appraisal relativism is my view, and I don't endorse appraiser relativism. It's just that I recognize the importance of the distinction between appraiser and agent relativism. We say, but it indexes your preference to a theoretically maximally informed self. Yeah. So, if you tell me right now some theoretically maximally informed version of me would want to do something radically at odds with what I currently want to do, I don't know if I could or would be motivated to care or to act accordingly. Like what if you found out, same thing with like an issue I ask of realists, like, okay, it turns out we have some machine that tells us what the stance independent moral facts are. um, or so just some way of knowing what they are. And it turns out that like we ought to like torture babies all day or scream at tables all day. Yeah, well, I'm not going to do those things. I don't want to do those things. And it'd be the same here. If you're like, well, we program this AI to figure out what a perfectly rational, fully informed version of you would do. Let's say we just have for some reason we know it's accurate. Okay, well, it tells me that a fully informed version of me would scream at tables all day. Well, I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to. And I'm not sure I could compel myself to want to do that. And I don't the other problem would be if it's still going to retain that weird type of normativity where the view would be that I should do those things independent of whether I want to. What does that mean? Why should I do those things? Yes, unaided senses. Telescopes are theory related. See, that's going to be an issue. I'm not sure. I think perception is perception not theory laden? Is my perception theory laden? I've got a bunch of theories. Maybe it influences my perception. Grant asks, if all questions in philosophy are solved, what hobby would you take up and why is it building giant stompy robots? It would not be building giant stompy robots. I love giant stompy robots. Like, what was that show called? I don't love it that much because I don't even remember the name of the show. But they would have like robots battle each other. I like watching that. I like big robots and lasers and dinosaurs and all the things like 4-year-olds enjoy. I really like that stuff. But I have like my cognitive configuration is not optimized for engineering. I would be very, very, very bad at doing that. So if I weren't doing this, you know what? BattleBots. Is that what it was called? That it doesn't even. Okay, I'll take your word for it. Yeah, BattleBots. Okay, that's two people. Eric says somebody that experiences psychosis, his perception is definitely theory laden. Yeah, see, that's what I'm thinking. It's already theory laden. Right. What was I saying? Oh, right. What would I do? What was the question? What hobby would you take up? So I like baking, but it's like if I wanted to do it well, I wish I had more time to do it. And like I like trying to bake new things I haven't baked before. And all kinds of stuff. I really like pastries. I made a paratha a little while ago. I don't even know how to pronounce it correctly. But I don't know if you know, but it's like a Indian, like really flaky bread. It's almost like a croissant, but like, and they're really good. You could stuff them with all kinds of things. You could throw different sorts of fillings in there, but they're great. I really love them. I like all the flaky stuff, any kind of croissant, anything with phyllo dough, baklava, all that stuff. I love that stuff. So pastry, that would be one hobby, making pastries. I have made a few pastries. I've done it a little bit. I got some pictures around here somewhere. I'm not going to start throwing them up. That would be way too long. I'd have to organize a folder or something. So I like doing that. The other thing I really wish sometimes I wish like there was an alternate version of me so I could see how this life would go. Maybe it'd be horrible. But I wouldn't be good at graphic design or coding, but I would like to work on the dialogue, story, game design, game mechanics, and other features of video games. So, I really love game mechanics, and like I loved okay, Neverwinter Nights was not the greatest game, but I love the implementation of the like third edition Dungeons and Dragons rules, and it was really awesome to see that relatively well implemented in a game. Like you did have like the AD&D stuff in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. I really like that. I think the implementation in Baldur's Gate 3 is phenomenal. So I like game mechanics. I like to see how they're cashed out in games and how they work. Game balancing, that sort of thing. But I really like games with good stories, good dialogue. Like if you go back and you play like Fallout 1 and 2, the dialogue is just ridiculously good. Planescape Torment, my God, like it's awesome. And then you play other games where I quite like Witcher 3. I think that has good dialogue and good voice acting. So that's something that's often missing from older games. A lot of newer games have good voice acting. Some games are really dragged down by bad storylines, bad plot, inconsistencies, bad game design, lack of balance. So, I don't know if there's a role in the video game industry for someone that does not code or do graphic design or that sort of thing, but just like works on dialogue, works on plot, works on story. Would that be something I think I would do well at? Like world building would be really cool. I really like when there's a new and well designed world. I quite like the world in Pillars of Eternity. So that world seemed pretty cool. And when Deadfire came out, that the aesthetic of that, like you sail around on ships and as pirates, and it's cool. I like it. So yeah, that's another thing I would do. As far as other hobbies, I have no idea. We're now 35 minutes in and I haven't started the video. Good Lord. Okay. Okay. Are we gonna have to change the title of this? Do you have any book recommendations or something like that to get a start in contemporary philosophy? Not really. I'm not super happy with books. I mostly read articles. I don't read a lot of philosophy books. Um, some people have been recommending Humer's book, but I haven't read it. He has like a kind of intro book, and I disagree with Humer about everything. So I don't know if I would like what's in the book. My introduction to philosophy was through Nietzsche, of all people. So that was a weird way to get into it. Well, that was a rough entry. I started with Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and that I didn't know what the hell was going on. So it's weird that I turned out to be, well, there's affinities and there's differences and where I ended up. I mean, at least that's roughly what my start was based on. But what would I recommend? I honestly I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a good book recommendation. People ask me about meta ethics books, and I don't have a good recommendation there either. And sorry, I can't be more help with that. There are, and the other thing is I'm kind of a narrow in my focus, and so you know what I'd recommend? I'd recommend that you go check out Majesty of Reason's channel, Joe Schmid. If anyone's going to steer you right, it's going to be him. He is brilliant, prolific, fair-minded, thoughtful, good at making decisions about what to spend his time on. He's way better at time management than me. And if anybody has good book recommendations, there's very likely he's going to have good book recommendations, and it wouldn't surprise me if he has a video on it. So check out Majesty of Reason. I bet he's got good stuff over there. Yeah, I've heard this before. Detroit says I think it's pronounced more like Parata. I've seen when I see it on a menu, there's a TH, so, but I don't know how to pronounce it. But anyway, I was fairly successful the first time I attempted it. I tried a couple different techniques of like twisting and folding to get the folds in it. I like experimented with them. I can't remember which one. I think the one that worked is like twisting it into a spiral and then smashing it down. I don't know. No one's going to know what I'm talking about, but that worked pretty well. But yeah, pastry and video games. That's what I would do. Okay, Edgar saying more about Van Frossen. I feel like, well, I'll read it, but I can't really get into in the middle of this video. But it's cool to be told about stuff I don't know anything about. All right, Van Frossen recognizes observable. Right. Under normal conditions, telescope or microscope expand our vision, but other tools are constructing images and we are interpreting them. Okay, fair enough. Pinecone asks if I have thoughts on neurodivergence. I do, but I'm not going to talk about them. All right. Zachary Mazel, what does objective mean in reference to objective beauty? Typically, it's going to be something like that facts about what makes something beautiful or not are not determined by people's preferences, attitudes, judgments, things, that sort of thing. So it's going to typically mean something like stance independent, but sometimes it means something else. So it became a food stream again. Not really. I'm not talking that much about food. All right. Pinecone says you could work for dialogue in video games, but it's very competitive, or the pay is part-time contract basis. How do you even get started doing that? Because like if I had showed up, because like I'm happy with where I'm at. So I'm in academia. That's what I do. And obviously, like I'm not here talking about video games or pastries. Well, I am talking about it a little bit, but I mostly talk about meta ethics. So clearly, that's where my brain drives me. But I don't even know what that it would look like. I never seriously looked into it. I don't know why. Or Shalev says, do you have any thoughts on the accuracy or effectiveness of breaking down ethics into the categories of meta ethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics? Not really. I do. So Andrew Sepielli was questioning me today on why I thought relativism was like a meta ethical view, and he didn't think it was. He was making comparisons to utilitarianism, and I find that approach interesting. I'm used to framing things in terms, at least in that respect, in terms of the mainstream analytic way of framing them, and he's challenging that, which is awesome. I like that. I don't have a problem with that. It's just this is the framing I'm used to, and so I'm going to keep framing it this way because I think it's useful. But if I could be convinced that framework is not a useful one, I would consider abandoning it. I think it might make how you articulate and explain things to people more challenging. You have this kind of tension. The more you cleave to mainstream ways of framing things, the more you're stuck with whatever deficiencies that they have. The more you deviate from them, the more you push towards appearing like some tinfoil hat fringe weirdo. So you have to go through the tinfoil hat inadequacy of mainstream account spectrum, and wherever you end up on there is going to be less than ideal. So you're kind of stuck with that. So you say, Orshalov says, my seeming is that people often settle on a meta-ethical stance because of the normative framework they're operating under, or vice versa. They don't seem to have interacted much for me. So I was a utilitarian at the same time as an anti-realist, and then I just stopped being a utilitarian at some point. I don't think that there was any close interaction, though. Detroyer, my introduction to philosophy is debates on theism. Oof, that's rough. Levzer says, my introduction to logic was Darth Dawkins. How does that even happen? Edgar says, Humor's book is amazing. I highly recommend it as an introduction. That's the name. Thank you. Can we pin that? 1 second. Try to pin this. 1 moment. Why am I asking myself if I could do things if I know I could do them? Boom, pinned. So, hey, Mike Humor, if you watch this, by the way, my previous reviews of his videos, he was posting all the videos on Twitter. So massive credit to Mike Humor. I'm sitting there in videos just critiquing him, and he's sharing that with his audience. That is awesome. I don't know if I would have the courage to share videos of people critiquing me. Cool. So, Mike, if you're watching this there, I panned your video. I pinned your video. In the video that I'm currently in, I pinned your book. So I'm bringing people to making purchases of your book. I'm not expecting any sort of compensation for that. So people should read. And I don't just say this. People do the stupid thing. People should go read people that disagree with me. If I thought if some work was like super awful and people shouldn't read it, I would say that. I don't know enough about his book to know what I would think of it, but go read it. I don't know. A lot of people seem to like it. So go read the book. All right. Even though I haven't read it, I don't know. I should, right? I think it's on Audible. I could pick it up on Audible. I don't have any credits right now, though. I spent them all on. So I get like Dungeon Crawler Carl instead of instead of reading philosophy. I'll put it in the queue. I need to read it. Okay. What else we got? Sapir says, recently Lance got through an entire clip he was reviewing in one video. Only took like 40 minutes to get through a 3-minute video. That's true. I think it was like 44 minutes, right? And this time I'm 44 minutes in, and I haven't even done 1 second of the video. But we'll do like a part 2, and I'll change the name of this or something. I don't know. All right. Or maybe we just skip. Yeah, we'll just skip doing the review. I'll just change the name of this because it's weird to do 45 minutes and then not even start on the review. Can you change the name of a video in the middle of the video? Can I? One second. I'm trying to change the name. Did that work? If you refresh, wait, I can check it myself. What is wrong with me? God. Okay. Let's check it. Yeah, it worked. Okay. So No Mike Humor video today. I'm just going to talk to my audience, I guess, which is awesome. Like, I have such a tiny channel and you all show up and you talk to me. I love it. Oh, and by the way, for the person that threw some money at me, thank you so much. Appreciate it. That's so stupid of me. I didn't even say, you're probably not even here anymore. Probably threw some money at me. And then I'm like, I don't even know what that symbol is. And then I say some other stuff and then I forget what I'm doing. Yeah. Zictomorph, second channel for foodies called Gastronomic Realism. Think about it. But what would I do on the channel? I don't know what I would do. I do not have the setup to do a like a cooking show or something. Like that requires lighting and you got to avoid shadows and you need the right kind of microphone. You don't want to have too much superfluous noise. And I would be using blenders and stuff. And I have dogs and their nails click clack on the floor. You click 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 and they randomly bark. Do you think that's Timmy says, do you think a predictor for someone being a realist and a realist is whether they view their moral intuitions to be more credible than metaphysical intuition or vice versa? Well, moral intuitions might be a kind of metaphysical intuition. So if you mean like metaphysical intuitions about like dualism or like more fundamental questions about like how many types of things reality is composed of, they view their moral intuitions to be more credible. I don't know what the relationship there would be. So I'm not quite sure what you have in mind with that question. Parody of Language says, I just saw a debate that Destiny moderator where Tilly gives a Kantian social contract argument in favor of feminism. Do you think this kind of argument can work? I'm sorry, I'd have to see the argument. I don't know. Choice Paradox Lost is a decent book too. I interviewed him on it. Who? Paradox Lost. What is that? All right, people talking to each other. Xavier says, it's arguably one of your top fans. You're doing exactly what I come to see, Lance. No, hey, cool. Thank you. Jonah says, are you familiar with hinge epistemology? So I'm not familiar with anything, apparently. Apparently I'm just an ignorant idiot that doesn't know anything. Are you familiar with hinge epistemology, particularly Crispin Wright's account? No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm just not. Sorry. I really need to sit down and read, don't I? Man, I'm not prepared for this. All right, I am caught up to the chat. So where do we go from there? I don't know what to do at this point. Do I review a shorter video? Because I can't just sit here and do nothing and wait for people to ask more questions. I get all anxious. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I have a whole big list of videos here. Here. Okay, here's more stuff. Thank you. All right, everybody, throw your questions at me. Just what the hell? This is what we're doing, apparently. I was not planning on this, but whatever. I've been away for a few weeks, so why not? Throw your questions at me. Why not? Let's do it. What do you think about the fact that according to Phil Papers 2020, there's no consensus on normative ethics? Yeah, that's interesting. If you look at it, it's almost perfectly divided, like 50-50, like 50-50. I was about to say 50-50-50. It reminds me of the South Park episode with Al Gore with Man Bear Pig, where he said 50% bear, 50% man, 50% pig. I love that. So it's about a 1/3 split, which of course you already said. So what the hell am I doing? Being redundant. Yeah, it's a pretty. I think virtue ethics came slightly out ahead by like 1 or 2 percentage points. I don't know what's going on there. I think that's strange. I was surprised that virtue ethics was that high on there. I didn't think it was that. But what can we make of that? Another thing that's surprising is that consequentialism is as high up on there as it is. I would have thought that would be lower. I would have thought virtue ethics would be lower, and I would have thought deontology, other, and hybrid views would be more popular on there, and they don't seem to be, because I think you have about 30-something% for each of those views. Maybe it's like in the high 20s, and I don't think you have a huge other. What the hell? Let's go look it up now. Why are we speculating when we have the internet available to us? Let's have a look. I don't know why I'm saying that part of that. Oh, wow. No, the numbers are okay. So it looks like they allow overlap with choosing one of those multiple. Oh, that's what it's got to be. People choosing multiples. Okay. So 1 second. All right. So here you could see, and I was wrong. It wasn't high 20s. They're all above 30%. Deontology, 32%, consequentialism, 30.6%, and virtue ethics, 37%. And then other is almost 34%. And there's going to be, it looks like only 6.5% choose alternate view. What is the breakdown? It must be a whole lot of people in this percentage that are just choosing multiple views. So what, from looking at these percentages, I think what I would say is that probably what it's indicating, maybe what it's indicating is that people don't really consider any singular sort of, like, people aren't like mononormative theorists where they think one theory accounts for everything that we want to capture by our normative moral accounts, but that two or more of these accounts are needed to cover all the bases. So you're not going to have too many people that don't think consequences are like such a big deal that they would at least partially want to call themselves a consequentialist. But look, you have like what threshold utilitarians, which is kind of incorporating kind of deontological constraints on it. If you go back and you look at like Scheffler's view, then consequences are going to be, so like if you're a deontologist, you're going to put these consequentialist constraints in. If you're a consequentialist, you're going to want to put these deontological constraints in. So it might be that most people just aren't all in on one of these accounts. Like, who's going to say, yeah, character doesn't matter, virtues don't matter, traits don't matter, let's just focus on actions? Well, maybe a lot of people, but apparently not that many, because an enormous number of people really care about virtue ethics. So it's likely something related to, again, I said likely. I need the proper qualifiers when I say these sorts of things. The impression I get here is just that no one normative theory can fully accommodate strong and probably non-overridable inclinations people have when it comes to how they think about normative issues. That would be my take. All right. What else do we have? Edgar asks, is this evidence against realism because we'd expect convergence at least? It's not very good evidence. So, I don't take evidence of philosophers endorsing realism to be strong evidence of realism. So I'm going to be disinclined to take some sort of indirect suggestion of unresolved normative theorizing to be strong evidence against realism. There is, I think, Kane B on his channel, maybe goes back a little while, has this sort of incoherence argument for anti-realism that would roughly be like, if you have just irreconcilable commitments towards conflicting normative theories or moral positions and they just can't be reconciled, like they couldn't all be true. Like, so, I mean, it couldn't be true both that we ought only maximize utility and we ought not only maximize utility from a realist perspective, because then like we're committed to contradictions. That's not going to fly. And so you could get a kind of anti-realist account out of something like that. Maybe I don't know if that would be like a skeptical account. I don't even remember the account exactly, but Game B has a video where it has this kind of a, maybe we just have non-negotiable but conflicting commitments, and that creates problems for us metaethically. The next 10 books on my reading list. I don't plan that far ahead. What is that book's name? So I did just pick up one book that I'm going to be reading pretty soon, probably next. Where is that book? It's The Role of Intuitions in Philosophical Methodology by Serena Maria Nicoli. So that's probably the next one, or at least selected articles within that book. What else is in the pipeline? This one I've been intending to read for a while. Philosophy in the Flesh, the Embodied Mind and its Challenge to Western Thought. So and that's George Lakoff and Mark Johnson. So that's on the list. Somebody sent me that book and I really wanted to read that for a while. So those are two that are in the pipeline. I am not planning that far ahead because that's a pretty hefty book. Jonas says, I highly recommend Wright's 2004 paper, Warrant for Nothing and Foundations for Free. Okay, let me nab that. Done. All right, I'll grab that later. Maya says, "Do you have?" It's Maya. I don't know how to say the rest of it. I'll go Maya. Do you have one between the three deontology, consequentialism, and virtue ethics that you lean more? Yeah. Well, I used to be a utilitarian, as you'd be a type of consequentialist. So I was never drawn towards deontology. I thought utilitarianism was obvious. And when I was a utilitarian, I call myself a retired utilitarian now. It's a bit tongue in cheek. Uh, I still have sympathies for the view. I think it's misrepresented a lot, kind of like relativism is. But yeah, I was a utilitarian. Of the three, if someone said you got to pick one, I would pick consequentialism. I see little of value in deontology. I understand where virtue ethicists are coming from with the kind of there's this kind of revival anti-modernist critique of overemphasis on acts and the importance of morality stemming from look, if you look at somebody like Mill, even Mill is going to say, look, you can't just go around calculating how to maximize utility all the time. You're going to want your actions to flow from a disposition or character that you naturally internalize. And so even there, character cultivation is going to be a critical component of the practical implementation of a normative theory. And deontology and consequentialism have the downside that they focus on like the target of what's morally good or bad. Like they say, here are the obligations, here's what you ought to do in abstracta, but they're not decision procedures. I mean, maybe some forms of deontology would have a decision theoretic component, but knowing what's right or wrong and how you cultivate the mindset to act in accord with what's right or wrong are different things. And taking the psychology out of moral theorizing, I think, is a bad idea. So I can understand any approach to moral theorizing that wants to make it more practical and grounded and to take more proper stock of the way human psychology works. But so yeah, utilitarianism with a little splash of some virtue theoretic stuff would be my preference. Well, it was my preference. These days, I just don't really endorse any normative theory. Jonah says, "What do you make of moral anti-realists who endorse a normative ethical theory to be endorsing exactly?" It may be a reflection of their personal preferences or standards or something like that. Yeah, okay, exactly what you say. So you say, as an anti-realist utilitarian, I endorse it because it reflects my own values. That's exactly what I did when I was a utilitarian. Facundo. Oh, over from Facebook, right? Cool. Good to see you here. I'm sure people say I'm arrogant, but I can't help it. I cannot accept the injunction to read more realists. That might not be a waste of time for someone who debates the subject often. Yeah. So if you dislike a view or you reject a view, you gotta engage the people that articulate and defend the view. Have you considered this is from Eric? Have you considered doing a video on the realism anti-realism divide or lack thereof? Maybe you and Nathan. Like in general, or with respect to morality in particular? And what do you have in mind? Because I'd be open to something like that. Okay, back to Facundo. But I cannot help feel extremely confident that it's just confused nonsense, and I think I'm done trying to give the benefit of the doubt. Even if you thought something like that, doesn't mean it's not worth engaging with or reading what people have to say. So if you went around trying to like debunk astrologers or ghost hunters, you still got to know what they think and why they think it. Is Canby's well, I don't think it came from Canby. I think he was reviewing an argument. I don't think it's like his idea. Maybe it is. I don't think so though. I think he got it from like he was reviewing something. And yeah, the kind of thing he was talking about is not the same thing as what Don Lowe was talking about. Let me just pull up the video. Man, where is it? I don't see it. It's not coming up. I see one. I see one called moral underdetermination, but that doesn't sound like it. I don't know where it is. I would have to find the video. If somebody else wants to find it, I don't want to sit here in the middle of the stream trying to find it. But if someone else finds it, I remember it had like that illusion of an object that can't really be real in the thumbnail. Maybe I could. I really want to find it. Look through here real quick. I'm not seeing it. Do, 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 do. Still looking. Okay. I'm not finding it. So if somebody else wants to look for it, put a link in there and let me know. Found it. Right as I said that. Got it. All right, here it is. That is the Kane View video that I was referencing. It's called The Incoherence of Morality. And it's not the same view as Don Loeb. All right. Whoop. Let's see. Fukuno, you say that they don't even seem capable of grasping it, that moral realists don't seem capable of grasping anti-realism. I'm not so sure about that. Some of them seem really invested in misrepresentations of various anti-realist views. So you might be right about some realists, but I bet there's quite a few realists out there that could characterize the anti-realist perspective quite accurately. You got to be careful not to conflate like the kind of people you just debate randomly online from like people that work on the topic. Some of the people you debate randomly online will be brilliant, some of them less so. Kodalun says, if moral realists are correct and there are moral facts out there, don't they still have a value alignment? Have to have value alignment with those facts in order for them to be normative? Can subjectivism subsume realism? Depends what you mean by for them to be normative. For them to be motivating, I think so. And so, in that sense, when you say can subjectivism subsume realism, I think in a certain way, yeah, it does. Like, how would you comply with the objective moral facts unless you had at least some defeasible motivation to do so? And can you have motivations without a desire? What would that mean? So, I think like how is realism going to achieve anything of practical significance unless people wanted to comply with what the objective moral facts were? Now, if you say, oh, well, the beliefs themselves somehow motivate action, then you might just be making weird claims about human psychology. I don't know if they're true or not. But if they're not, how you can't really get people to be moral unless they want to be moral. Jonah says global consequentialism, which I endorse, holds that decision procedures ought to be evaluated and selected on a consequentialist basis. Yeah, kind of. That sounds roughly in the vicinity of pragmatism, although pragmatism is going to have some stopgaps and some measures for like what it's not going to like generally advise some sort of local practice that is inconsistent with a more holistic approach towards goal success. So maybe this would just be true of this approach too, that like you favor the best set of decision procedures that all things considered optimize for your goals, and not like, hey, believing you're invincible will make you super confident, and so you'll do well in interviews, but then also like you walk into traffic and that you get yourself killed. That would be really stupid and not effective. Cohen says, speaking of KB, what do you think of his extension of moral anti-realism to normative anti-realism, including hypothetical imperatives? Yeah, I just endorse that. So, I encountered some people that early on through, like when I started getting involved in debating about this stuff and discussing metaethics online, that would throw companions and guilt arguments at me. And so roughly what these arguments try to do is they include a parity premise where they try to show, look, the kinds of motivations or reasons one would have for rejecting moral realism also apply to other forms of normative realism. And if you don't want to reject those other types of normative realism, then you're not really in a good position to reject moral realism. So it's a kind of sink or swim type thing where they stand or fall together. So either on grounds of consistency, you're going to have to either reject both moral realism and reject some other type of normative realism you might not want to reject, or you're going to have to accept moral realism just as you accept some other type of realism. And like the one Cuneo pushes in the normative web is epistemic. So there are facts about how we like what would justify our beliefs, and like basically what epistemic practices we ought to employ with respect to going about forming beliefs that are justified and acquiring knowledge. And at least some people that reject moral realism might not be so comfortable rejecting epistemic realism. But if the same sorts of considerations that they employ to reject moral realism also apply to the reasons that one might have for rejecting epistemic realism. On pain of inconsistency, they're not really in a good position to reject one and not the other. Now, the way out of that would be to offer some sort of symmetry breaker or some reason to say, look, no, there's special reasons why we reject moral realism, but we don't reject realism in these other cases. And that might be an approach some anti-realists want to take. It's not the approach I take. The reasons I have for being a moral anti-realist are actually just are reasons I would have for being an anti-realist in any other normative domain already. So the issues are not specifically about morality. They're about the normativity element of moral realism. So really, I just already was a normative anti-realist. So someone saying, but if you reject moral realism, you'd have to reject epistemic realism. Yeah. Yep. I already did that. So to me, it's like somebody saying, well, if you reject Bigfoot, you're going to have to reject the Loch Ness Monster. Sure. I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. I don't think that's biting a bullet. Now, some proponents of this view will make a further argument, which they'll say that that move is kind of closed to you as a normative anti-realist. So that if you're like, say, a global normative anti-realist, you reject normative realism in all domains. They would argue that that's self-defeating because now there's no epistemic reasons to accept the view. And I don't think it's a very good argument. There's no stance-independent epistemic reasons, but when did I agree that we need those? That's not a position I'm required to endorse either. So I deny that justification or reasons for believing things require stance-independent epistemic norms in the first place. So I don't believe in them. I also don't think they're necessary. So that kind of critique helps itself to either would have to argue for something I don't accept and don't think there's good arguments for, or it just presupposes or helps itself to a presumption that I don't grant. So I don't really think companions and guild arguments are very successful as methods of defending realism or refuting anti-realism. I think that they just compel anti-realists to probably accept that there are no stance-independent normative facts in any domain, and like good riddance, they shouldn't accept that. Sapir says normative anti-realism is a W. It is. Echelon says, any thoughts on meta-ethical transient objectivity that's briefly reached in a sort of transcendental moment where two parties engage in normative ethical debate? That's a bit esoteric for me. I don't really know what that's about. And I haven't read anything about that. So unfortunately, I'm just not familiar with that. Zarla says, what are your thoughts on effective altruism? I don't have a lot of thoughts on it. I don't have any problem with people doing their damn best to figure out the best ways of having a positive impact on the world and doing so. So in that respect, I think people should be all in on effective altruism. How it's shaped up as a movement, I'm less. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I've met a bunch of effective altruists. A lot of them are great people, and I think it's probably done a lot of good. It's redirected a lot of money towards places that money should be going. I don't know if I have much else to say about it besides that. Edgar says, it seems that the division into supporters of hypothetical versus categorical normativity makes more sense than division moral realist versus anti-realist. Error theorists even sympathize with Foote's article. I don't know, because they reject hypothetical and categorical. So where would that put me? All right. We're caught up on questions there. So, but we got a lot of people on the stream. What should I do? I gotta go make dinner pretty soon. So we got another few minutes, or I could cut it off here. Think we should wrap it up here? Wrap it up all strong, right? Things are going good. Don't want to get too tired. I got a baby to take care of. All right. So I'm gonna go make dinner. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for that. That was unexpected. The outpouring of questions and comments. I came on here to review, and I didn't need to because there's so much engagement. I'm seeing about 50 people in the stream, and for such a small channel, that's amazing. So, I thanks everybody for being here. This is really great. With time, I've gotten a lot more comfortable being on here, and it's really cool. I'm sitting in a basement right now. It's not, I'm pretty socially isolated. So this is kind of maybe it's a little sad, but it's kind of like my vicarious It's not even vicarious. No, it's my indirect means of getting out into the world and interacting with people without actually going anywhere. So vicarious. The hell am I talking about? I just want to use fancy words and sound smart. No, you know what it made me think of is that Tools song. Yeah. So okay, I'm zoning out. I got to get out of here. All right, everybody. What the hell is wrong with me? All right, everybody. Thanks so much for doing this. We got another comment from Facundo. Make a video about if it's possible to understand moral anti-realism without being anti-realist. I'm not going to do that. I really don't want to antagonize moral realists as much as it might seem like I like to do that. I don't. I like to get along with people. Yeah. All right. Man, it's weird. I went in here and I feel I probably look like I'm pretty active, but I'm very tired. I got a lot to do. But thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Really what I was getting at is I really appreciate everybody being here. Thanks so much for being here. It makes me feel a lot better to be able to interact with people. Because it's very enjoyable for me. So thanks, everybody. I will be back to review more videos. I've got some guests that are going to be in the channel. I'm trying to set up hosting a debate, so that's something to do. I'll get to the Q&A over the holidays if I can, but no promises. What else? Oh, I'm doing the series on moral relativism, so check that out. So stuff will be continuing on here. It's going to be a bit slower because I do need to focus on work and I do need to focus on family. So you're not, 2 or 3 weeks in between a stream might become the norm here. But if people keep popping up like this after, I did put a couple videos out anyway, so I'll be around. I'm just not going to be streaming 3 or 4 days a week, maybe once or twice. So it's not a huge slowdown. I will make time for this. It's not like I have a huge social life, right? So I'll make time. All right, everybody, do like the video, share the video, leave comments in the comment section. I'm going to start doing something where if I really like a comment or I think it's especially notable, I'm going to pin it. So that's an extra incentive to leave a good comment. When I do review videos, I like to remind people of this, and I'll keep doing so. If I didn't do it in this video, but if I direct engagement anywhere, if it's to read somebody's book, check out a YouTube video, check out a blog post, be polite to people. Don't be jerks. I don't want to have this community where, I'm like, hey, this person said a stupid or wrong thing, and then everybody goes over there and swarms the person who's really mean to them. I don't want that. And if people start doing that, I won't direct you over to this place. I won't review videos if you do that. So nobody's doing that. I'm not worried about it. If anything, I still seem to find myself as this one-man army where every time a new YouTube video comes out, I leave a comment. Here's the 17 reasons why you're wrong, to the point where people are like, hey, Lance is coming, or he's going to show up any minute. But you can all get involved. I mean, if you're learning stuff from me, or you have your own ideas, whether you disagree, if you disagree with me, pop into these videos. Let's make meta ethics like this super cool thing, so there's all the popular stuff. There's the pop music and the Pokemon and the meta ethics. It's not going to happen, but we can at least elevate its popularity just a tiny smidgen, right? Can we do that? I think we can do it. And y'all can help with that. All right, everybody. So do all the stuff, like, subscribe, share all the social media things. In the description of the video, there's going to be a link to all the ways you could support me. You could go subscribe to my blog. You could go subscribe to this channel. I got a Patreon. I got all the other stuff. So do all the things. All right, everybody. Catch y'all later. Take care.